Welcome back to the deep dive. So today we're really jumping into what you could call the heavyweight champion of Ethereum scaling.
Oh, for sure.
We're focusing squarely on Arbitrum, and when you look at the source material, it's a fascinating story. It's not just about growth.
No, it's this dual narrative, right?
Exactly. On one hand, you have this platform showing just extreme economic dominance, and on the other, it's making this really risky but kind of revolutionary technical pivot.
That's absolutely right. And, the reason Arbitrum is in this position is actually pretty simple. It solves Ethereum's biggest headache, the cost problem.
Right.
For anyone listening, the core idea is that Arbitrum uses what are called optimistic rollups. It bundles thousands of transactions together off-chain.
So it does the heavy lifting somewhere else.
Precisely. It leverages Ethereum security, so it's still safe, but it delivers radically cheaper transactions. I mean, we're talking about a token swap that costs maybe 30 cents on Arbitrum.
30 cents. And on Ethereum mainnet, that could be.
Well, in late 2025, it's been hovering closer to $3.78.
Wow.
So that tenfold, sometimes more, difference.
Yeah.
That's what's driving all this adoption.
So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out how Arbitrum is pulling off this balancing act. We've got sources talking about cutting-edge tech like Stylus.
And then reports with these aggressive economic stats, massive institutional adoption.
Yeah. How does one platform become the most stable place for big money and the most ambitious tech lab at the same time? That's what we need to figure out. Okay, so let's start with the technology, because this is where that pivot gets really fascinating. Let's unpack this new upgrade called Stylus.
Yep.
It's officially part of Arbitrum Nitro, or Arbo 32, and this is not just a small update.
No, not at all. This is Arbitrum making a huge leap. It's moving from just being an EVM extension to, a true general-purpose computing platform.
And how does it do that?
What Stylus delivers is this paradigm shift they're calling multi-VM. Yeah, so instead of only relying on the Ethereum virtual machine, the EVM, Stylus adds a second co-equal virtual machine that runs on WebAssembly, or WASM.
Okay, and WASM isn't totally new to Arbitrum, is it?
That's right. It's actually been the backbone of their fraud-proof system since the Nitro upgrade. It's kind of the internal language they use to check computation.
But the key difference here is they're not just using it internally anymore, they're opening it up to developers. Is that it?
Exactly. That's the huge unlock. That WASM engine opens the door for developers to use these industry-standard high-performance languages. We're talking Rust, C, C++.
And the sources say it's not just those, right? It's basically anything that can compile down to WASM.
Pretty much. So you can see Go, Sway, Move, even Cairo. This is a massive pool of developers that until now couldn't really build in this ecosystem unless they learned Solidity.
Okay, I have to pause here because I think a lot of people would ask, isn't the whole point of Ethereum the standardization around Solidity and the EVM?
That's a great question.
Like, doesn't opening the door to Rust and C++ just create fragmentation or new security problems that Solidity was meant to avoid?
It could, but they've designed it in a very clever way to avoid that. The key is seamless interoperability.
Okay.
So Stylus is built so that a traditional Solidity contract can fully call a highly optimized Rust program for, say, a really heavy piece of computation and then get the result back.
And vice versa.
So it's not an either-or choice. It's a both-and world. You can use the EVM for your core logic, but offload the really expensive stuff to a super efficient WASM program.
So let's dig into that efficiency. Why is WASM so much better for certain things? Where does that performance boost actually come from?
It really comes down to two things: speed and cost, especially for compute-heavy tasks. A WASM program is just way faster and uses less gas for memory-intensive operations compared to Solidity.
And why is that?
It's about maturity. I mean, languages like Rust and C have benefited from decades of compiler development. People have been optimizing them for memory, for speed.
For all sorts of things.
Right. Solidity is, relatively speaking, still very young. It just doesn't have that history of optimization. It's like bringing a Formula One engine to do one specific job in your car.
And that efficiency, that F1 engine, it unlocks real use cases that were just too expensive to even think about before.
Oh, absolutely.
What are we talking about specifically?
Okay, so first up is efficient on-chain verification. Think about ZK proofs. Generating and verifying those proofs is incredibly compute-heavy. Stylus makes it affordable.
And in DeFi.
It's a game changer for complex financial models. You could have custom pricing curves for AMMs that aren't just straight lines, or really complex options contracts that need intense calculations.
And this is where that general computing idea really comes to life, isn't it? The high-performance logic.
Exactly. Now, you can seriously talk about building on-chain games with complex physics, or generative art that needs a lot of computation to render.
Or even AI model.
Yeah, deploying, say, a compute-heavy AI model for on-chain inference. Stylus basically turns Arbitrum from just a fast transaction highway into a true platform for high-performance decentralized apps.
So the big question is, does this incredible tech actually translate into real-world economic dominance?
Well, let's turn to the numbers, because the sources suggest the answer is a huge yes, that tech is definitely supporting some massive economic activity. As of Q3 2025, Arbitrum is, without a doubt, the market-leading Layer 2.
Okay, let's hit those metrics, because they really do show serious market trust. The total value locked, or TVL, hit an incredible $19.21 billion.
And just to put that in perspective, that's the highest TVL of any Ethereum L2. It's more than many entire Layer 1 ecosystems.
That scale gives them huge leverage.
It does. Arbitrum commands 37.1% of the entire L2 market, and the transaction volume backs that up. The network's already processed over 2.16 billion transactions since it started.
But the thing that really stands out is the pace of that growth. Our sources show the TVL went from about 1.3 billion at the end of 2024
to 8.6 billion by the middle of 2025.
That's a 330% increase in just 6 months. That's an insane amount of liquidity flowing in.
And it was fueled by institutional players and major DeFi protocols moving over. User activity followed right along. We're looking at 1.45 million active wallets now.
And there was that huge surge, right? A 37.7% month-over-month jump in daily active addresses just before summer 2025.
A big driver there was the stablecoin market. It topped $6.8 billion on Arbitrum, which shows it's become a key settlement layer for finance.
Which brings us to a data point that I have to say it really surprised me when I was reading the material. It just screams institutional trust.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
The U.S. Department of Commerce. In July 2025, they started publishing quarterly GDP data directly on Arbitrum One.
That is a monumental piece of validation. I mean, think about it. Why would a federal agency choose a decentralized L2 over their own controlled, centralized database?
It says everything about the perceived security and the immutability.
Exactly. They are choosing transparency and cryptographic proof over a system that just relies on trusting a central authority.
It's basically the ultimate stamp of approval. The blockchain's guarantee is now trusted enough for federal statistics. And it's not just government, right?
No, the institutional trust goes further. You have the partnership with Robinhood. They're aiming to bring tokenized U.S. stocks to European users, and they're using Arbitrum for the infrastructure.
For the speed and low fees.
For the speed and low fees. When you have major financial players and government bodies building on your platform, your reputation for reliability it's pretty much locked in.
And that reliability ties right back to the fees, doesn't it?
It does. The network collected about $10 million in gas fees recently, so it's generating sustainable income. And they're constantly tweaking their pricing algorithms, like with Time Boost, to make sure fees are predictable.
So that 30-cent swap fee stays reliable even when things get busy.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about the structure that governs this whole massive economic engine. The ARB token. We need to be really clear about what it does.
Absolutely, because it's different from a lot of other tokens. The ARB token have one primary singular job: governance.
Just governance.
Just governance. ARB holders are the decision makers. They vote on everything from huge protocol upgrades, like what to do with Stylus next, to how the DAO's treasury funds get spent.
And it is critical to point out, ARB is not the gas token.
Correct. All transaction fees on Arbitrum are still paid in ETH. This keeps it aligned with the main Ethereum ecosystem.
So if we look at the tokenomics, there's a 10 billion total supply. Who actually holds the power here?
Well, the community, through the Arbitrum DAO treasury, holds the biggest slice. It's about 35.3%, or 3.5 billion ARB.
That's a huge war chest.
It's a massive resource pool for funding grants, incentive, ecosystem growth, anything the DAO decides. The Off-Chain Labs team and advisors have the next biggest chunk at 26.9%.
But that's vesting over time.
Right. There's a vesting schedule. It fully vests by March 2027, unlocking at about 1.1% each month until then. It's a measured release.
So that's the structure. But how does the community actually use that power? I know there's a specific process for governance.
Yeah, it's a two-step process, and it's designed to be slow and deliberate to avoid rash decisions.
Makes sense.
First, any proposal has to go through a non-binding temperature check. This is usually off-chain, just to see what the community sentiment is, get some discussion going.
And only if it passes that.
Only then does it move to the official on-chain binding vote. That's where people actually lock up their ARB tokens to make the decision final. It prioritizes consensus over speed.
But even with a careful process like that, the sources point out some real risks in managing a DAO this huge.
Oh, for sure. The biggest challenge is that potential for interest misalignment.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what a few large token holders or institutional partners want might not always be what's best for the long-term health of the ecosystem or for the smaller developers building on it.
Right. And there are operational risks too, I imagine.
Huge operational risks. Just managing the funds, setting good incentives, figuring out things like staking rewards without accidentally creating a system that just inflates the token away. It's very complex.
Okay, let's zoom out now and put Arbitrum in its competitive context. It's the top optimistic rollup. We've established that. But how does that whole approach compare to other ways of scaling?
This really is the critical trade-off in L2 design right now. It's this rollups versus rollups debate.
Right.
So Arbitrum and its main competitor Optimism, they use the optimistic model. They basically assume all transactions are valid.
They're optimistic about it.
Exactly. And they rely on an economic game. There's a challenge window where anyone can submit a fraud proof if they spot a mistake. The big pro is that it's way easier to be EVM compatible.
But the con is the withdrawal time.
That's the unavoidable con.
Yeah.
Have that delay, usually about 7 days, while that challenge window is open.
And then you have the other side of the coin, the zk-Rollups.
Which completely flips the security model. Projects like Polygon zk-EVM don't assume, they prove. They use complex math validity proofs to cryptographically guarantee every transaction is correct before it gets settled.
And the pros there are huge. Immediate finality, better security.
And often better privacy. The main challenge has been how complex they are to build and the higher initial cost to generate those proofs, but that cost is coming down fast.
We should also compare it to Base, right?
Yes.
Given Coinbase's backing, it's grown so fast it feels like they're playing a different game.
They are targeting different markets. Arbitrum is all about ecosystem maturity, especially in really sophisticated DeFi.
You're talking about protocols like GMX, Radiant, Pendle.
Right, things that need deep liquidity and complex logic. Base is growing fast, but it's much more focused on consumer apps, SocialFi, leveraging that Coinbase connection to get retail users on board.
And the crucial difference is the token.
That's the big one. Arbitrum has the ARB token and this deep DAO structure. Base doesn't have a native governance token. Its direction is still very much centrally controlled by Coinbase.
Okay, so finally, we have to be honest about the risks that are still there in the optimistic design, even for a leader like Arbitrum.
Absolutely. The sources highlight two main structural risks. The first is the centralized sequencer.
Explain that.
Right now, Arbitrum uses a single centralized entity to order and batch transactions. Now, they have plans to decentralize this, but today, it's a potential point of control.
So in theory, that sequencer could censor transactions.
It could temporarily delay or censor them, yes. It couldn't steal funds, but it's a structural weak point until it's fully decentralized.
And the second risk?
It's the one that affects all cross-chain systems. Bridge exploits. Moving assets between L1 Ethereum and L2 Arbitrum relies on smart contract bridges.
And bridges are always a target.
Always a high-value target for hackers. A vulnerability in that bridge code is a risk to all the capital locked inside, no matter how secure the rollup itself is.
So the takeaway seems to be that Arbitrum offers this really powerful balance. You get incredible speed, it's easy for developers, and it's anchored to Ethereum security.
The great equilibrium.
But you, the user, need to understand that trade-off. Arbitrum wins on ecosystem maturity and flexibility, but if you need instant finality or the absolute strongest cryptographic security, you might still lean towards a zk rollup.
To kind of summarize this whole deep dive, Arbitrum is succeeding at scaling Ethereum with optimistic rollups. But more than that, it's pioneering this next generation of computing with Stylus and WASM. It's moving beyond the EVM's limits.
And at the same time?
At the very same time, it's showing this massive, undeniable economic growth. It's leading the market in TVL, and it has proven it's ready for institutions. I mean, the government partnership and the big finance deals say it all.
This deep dive, it really shows an ecosystem that's not just a scaling solution anymore. It's become a comprehensive computing platform
Yeah.
Just think about that convergence for a second. The US government is anchoring GDP data on the same network that can now run complex AI models written in Rust because of Stylus.
It's a convergence of trust, capital, and raw technical power.
Which really leaves us with a big provocative question for you to think about.
Yeah.
If a decentralized platform gets this efficient enough for hedge funds, and this secure enough for official government stats, what happens to the whole idea of a trusted middleman when the security is just math and the throughput is, well, potentially infinite? Specifically, what use case that's currently stuck on expensive private servers, what do you think will be the next big thing to move entirely on-chain now that a tool like Stylus exists?
Until next time.